Hello, friends, and welcome back. I'm with my dear friend and buddy and teacher and mentor, Tomei Schnitzius. One more time for a very enlightening discussion I know we're going to have today about the self. And what do we mean by the self? Because that's us. Um, and does that manifest in different forms or in different dimensions or different levels? Well, let's find out. Tomei, yeah,
Yeah,
putting you
let's
on the
find out.
spot. Yeah, putting you on the
Once
spot one
again,
more time. Yep,
one more time.
one more
Uh,
time.
so there's quite a few words for self actually. So there's myself and yourself and oneself and ourselves and themselves and all these selves, you know. Um, and as as those definitions have been given to us, it always seems to be defined in some aspect of our minds, um, some aspect of the here and now, as far as not necessarily the present moment, but the physical moment, the physicality of who we are. You know, if we're ourselves, it kind of signifies a group of human beings. You know, physical human beings. Themselves gives you, well, that's a sense of it's those guys, it's those selves, and that's those human beings. And um, myself is designated to my physical body and my name and being a male and that sort of thing. Yourself is a single person, a single human being. It's yourself, which means it's maybe your problem or your situation has nothing to do with me. So you developed whatever that was, and you got to deal with it, and so on. Um, and then there's oneself, which is like, oh, that signifies oneself, me, and it's just one. And so all these definitions of self that comes in, and then we start doing this work, and we're given another one, and we're given one that instead of having a low S self, which we'll get into, we're giving that we also have a capitalized S self, which is something that we are, but it's like not available necessarily to us because it's somewhere else. And you're wondering, well, what does that mean? It's somewhere else. Um, or it's part of me, but it's not part of me right now, or that sort of thing. So we're going to get into all that. We're going to look into more possibly a more consciousness way of looking at self, a earthly consciousness as well as a spiritual self. So I'm going to start off though with looking more at what we see as our physical self, or way we see ourselves, as we look in a mirror, for instance, or how I performed in a certain way, or what I own, or who I am defined by, and so on. And we call that more of our ego self. And ego self is a self that has been um, worked on and formed and created with a definition with the mind, based upon your childhood, especially because as a self is defined, ego self is defined, we can see that the experiences we have, as we've talked about in other podcasts of programming and life strategy, we start getting definitions when we're growing up as to how we're supposed to interact in life, how we interact as a family, how we interact with each other, how we interact with friends and acquaintances, and how we interact, say, for a church, how we interact in a religion, how we interact in school. All these interactions on a physical third dimensional plane begins to form what we define as how we're supposed to act. And so as we continue learning that as we go along, because there's various stages, of course, of understandings. First we have, understandings from one, even in the womb to 7 years old, where you're forming more experiential feeling type situations that your mind is seeing and experiencing and using words at some point to define for yourself what all this means, which then provides you a separate self. So you've heard that before, that phrase, separate self. I am not the same as my brother. I am separate from my brother. I am separate from my sister. I know this because my brother is a year older. My brother has different hair. My brother does different things. He has different friends. He has different eyes. His physical features are different than mine, and so on with the rest of my family. And so we have this definition that develops in our mind early on that there is a separate self. A book comes to mind again, Bill, that we've shared with them before, and that's the Children of Law of One book. And they really go deeply into separate self in this book. So if there's any questions or curiosities or confusion about separate self, you can read that book. You can also look into Eckhart Tolle's book as well. He has several books on separate self that you can get into. Well, he mentions this in many of his books, so it wouldn't matter necessarily which ones you get. But Eckhart Tolle would be another place to go. Also, the Theosophical Society has many books um, about separate self and the self explanations as well, and what we're getting into today. Those would be Alice Bailey books that are from the turn of the century in the 1800s, and also Madame Blavatsky's books also bring that stuff in. So there's quite a number of places you can go to start recognizing some of this stuff for yourself, and start understanding in your own way what some of the meanings are that I'm explaining today. So I just wanted to kind of take a side note for that for a second. So as we develop these definitions, then we take them into later stages in our life of teenage years, for instance, going to high school, going into college, understanding that, oh, there's new definitions now of who I am. I could be a football player in high school. I could be a track star. I could be a straight A student. I could be studying Latin, or I could be studying French, or any number of things. In college, I'm now looking for a career per se, and my career can be based on various subjects and so on that I go on. And as I keep going on this move, this kind of linear way of living from one age to another age, I am developing more of my separate self. I'm comparing myself to others and how I'm going to fit into life, in jobs, in relationships, in school, in my knowledge, in my wisdom, uh, in the hobbies and habits I might create along the way. I'm an ultra runner versus just a marathon runner. I am a track star instead of doing an ultra running. I am a linebacker in football and not a halfback in football. And so I'm separate from those kind of individuals. And so you can see in society in so many different ways that there is a separation of how everyone looks. And we admonish that separation as we go, because in some cases we either don't like being separated or we wish to be more separated. We keep looking at ways of creating more separation or less separation. And what that depends on is, are we searching to become more engaged in third dimensional reality, which is a dualistic nature, which is more about good and bad? And so as I'm growing up, I'm starting to understand what good and bad is in my definitions of separate self as I've been going along the linear pathway of my journey compared to somebody else. Or do I wish to let all that go because it doesn't serve me anymore and I wish to be more of a unified being? So I'm connected to more all things, which then will involve letting go of my old self, which is the separated self and ego self, and move into more of a energetic, illuminated, um, higher self is what a lot of the mystery schools would call it, which is more of a being that is looking to find more of myself in others instead of separating myself from others, which is more of a unifying principle as opposed to a separation understanding. And my suggestion here in a lot of the work and a lot of the podcasts we've done up to this point is we are heading in that direction. You've Many of you have heard of the shift, and if some of you haven't, we're heading towards a shift. And what is that really about? My suggestion here, and this is my personal suggestion, is that we're heading towards a place of letting go of the old self and the separation of self to a unified self, to where we start treating each other with awareness, and compassion and empathy, and understanding that the way we will grow from this point forward is more within our spiritual capacities of understanding the truth of who we are from our hearts, as opposed to letting our mind define who we're supposed to be, and we continue to separate ourselves as we keep going. So that's kind of where we're heading, I believe, is into that more spiritual self, that more higher S, capitalized S self. And we're at the position now of all these new energies coming into the planet that is causing our own planet Earth to shift into its higher vibrational self. We know that many of the scientists have been measuring the energies and the frequencies and the vibrations that have been coming into the planet, and also the planet itself. And it is registering higher and higher frequencies, which are causing, say, the poles to move a little bit, which has been shown already. It's not going to be a complete polar shift or anything like that, but they are moving. Um, and the planet itself is changing. And as the planet changes into a higher frequency, a higher vibration, we cannot stay at the low density vibrations we have been at. We have to match ourselves to the planet itself. Otherwise, we can't stay here. Our bodies will not be able to function in a level that can stay on this planet. We'll pretty much die away, and possibly, who knows, move on to a different place, our souls to continue on a third dimensional aspect. But I also believe that some of us that are working towards becoming more this unification, self, will stay and be able to assist the planet in changing and moving as we continue to go. So, and again, explaining the separation of things in the separate self. Um, that separate self has a lot of judgment that's involved. And so as I continue on my journey as a separate self in this third dimensional way, I am looking to find a way to, um, let's just say, become more one up compared to others. And so I wish to find a way that I can be a better self than someone else or some other body, some other soul. And so I separate myself more and more. And society and the world tells me how that can look. And if I have that belief system, um, and sometimes it's based in religion, sometimes it's attachment to money, it's attachment to the things that you have, it's attachment to power, pure power. It's attached to maybe a separation of country to country, of religion to religion, and so on. As the powers and the understandings shift around the world, which one do I attach myself to because I want to be in a better separation place than a less better separation place? And so thus the duality continues to grow and more separation happens. And with that, more judgment takes place. And the judgment, I'm going to suggest, in what you are seeing in today's world becomes much deeper, much stronger, more intense. It's kind of like what they used to say in some regards, and I believe they're still saying in some regards, is that you're either with us or you're against us. So you have to pick a side. And if you pick that side, you're on the wrong side. If you pick this side, you're on the right side. And everybody's wrong and right side is the right side. So you're torn in between the separation because in some cases it's come to the extreme of either going either way and there's no middle ground anymore. So you feel like you can't go either way. And it makes it very difficult for us to find balance in the world that we're seeing right now because so many things are happening. And you're also seeing, I would suggest, because of the separation self that's going on, you're seeing much more harm being created when you're not choosing the right side. And those right sides shift dramatically. You could see it in our governments, you can see it in religions. People are using rules and regulations that are not even there anymore to say that they're right. Governments are using the ability to say they're not going to follow the laws that have happened over all the years that have been created to serve people in a way that everybody can be heard. Those are going away and they don't care if they're going against the laws. Governments are doing that. People are even doing that. They're tired of listening to how we can all come together. They want to be right. And so you're having wars and civil disobedience and all kinds of things in ways we never saw before. You'd see it every once in a while in the past, but not in the extremes that we're having today. The extremes of the separate self uh, have gotten so out of hand that we're starting to relive, and I'm suggesting this because some of you don't even believe in Atlantis, but in the years of Atlantis, in past civilizations that have long gone, these kind of things were happening as well. And because they became so extreme, they were wiped off the planet. That is a real possibility at this point. It's a real possibility that the earth itself will shake us all off. You're seeing a lot of the weather patterns, a lot of the fires, a lot of the rivers of water that are coming in, some of the um, cold fronts and warm fronts that are coming through a lot of different countries and so on, where you're having master floods, not just little floods, but just incredible deluges of water right after fires have been created that just wipe clean the land and people's houses and ways of life. And they don't know how they're going to come back. So the earth itself, I'm suggesting, is looking at releasing some of the things that have been going on because it's tired of the low frequencies and density energies that are here. That might sound very outlandish. However, it's happening and you can look at it any way you want, but it's still happening all the same. So many people are going to have to start making choices as to where they're actually going to be living if they are going to try and continue to live on this planet. Are you going to live on the coastlines? Are you going to live in dry areas? Are you going to live where there's forests because those forests can't get the rain they used to have, and so there's going to be more forest fires? All these kind of decisions are going to shift the way people are going to move around the planet. And at the same time, what that's going to do is you're going to come face to face with other people that have different opinions, different ideas, and the separate self will be stronger and stronger as it keeps growing. There will be a separate self for humanity. I've said in past podcasts that I believe that humanity is going through its own dark night of the soul. If you don't understand what Dark Night of the Soul is, we just did a podcast on it. You can check it out. The title's there. It'll give you some idea what I'm talking about because I talk about an individual dark night of the soul, which each soul might have to go through if they're ever faced with it. I believe humanity is going through its own dark night of the soul right now, which is finally having to face up to the fact of what humanity has created as a whole in the world, what harm it's caused the earth itself, in animals, in nature, what harm it's caused each other, and has to face the fact that the harm has been caused and has to own up to it and forgive itself for everything it does if we're going to stay here in some capacity. We have to find a way to come together, to not be separated. It's a harsh learning, but it has to take place if we're going to stay in a unified way. I believe if we make other choices for each one of us, then we're not going to be around because the separate self is taking it to such an extreme that things are going to happen that we could never have foreseen before. I've taken it pretty far here, off into another place, and so I'm going to bring us back a little bit, back to the separate self, and to say that each one of us has an opportunity to look deep within ourselves and our journey within to see how we've attached ourselves to that concept of separate self. How have we designed a definition of who we are to enhance the separate self within ourselves to be in control, to empower us to make the choices that we make to continue that journey into separation? And that is through the mind. And that is the journey I believe that most of us are here for, is to look at how we've created individually that separation and how we then can take that and turn it around and shift the energetic value of that separate self. And as we do that, we kind of go across what's called a veil, possibly, or we come over then onto the other side of what would be the heart as opposed to the mind. And there comes a point in the middle where we have that point of crossing over, where at that point the separate self that you have created will do everything it possibly can to hold you back. It doesn't want to lose its power. And this can be the dark night of your soul, per se. But this is where the ego is going to do all it can to stop you. It wants to keep you in separation. It wants to keep you in judgment. It will use fear in every capacity it can to stop you from crossing over. When you allow yourself to finally release that aspect of yourself that is judging, you then cross over into the heart, and the heart does not judge in any way. If you're judging at any moment, you are not in your heart. And so you're the only one that knows that. I'm not going to tell you you are. You have to find that for yourself. There is an experiential feeling of the heart versus an experiential feeling of the ego. You will know the difference for yourself. And as you cross over into that area where you start letting go of the old self, and that old self is all the judgments that you've created over your lifetime, how you've looked in life, and how you have separated yourself from others in lifetime and situations and so on, all the experiences that you've had. You start letting go of that old self. As you let go of that old self, there is created an emptiness within you. And each time you let go of part of that old self, that emptiness is waiting to be filled up with the heart, which is creating a new experience of unity, a new experience of being with the all things, all consciousness, and understanding that you are more than just the old self. You are more divine intelligence, you're more divine essence, you are available to have opportunities with infinite abundance, infinite consciousness, infinite beings, all sorts of things that now you have an opportunity for all this, and you start allowing yourself to make those choices that will present to you a different way of being in this third dimensional place. You start recognizing the judgments you might even still continue to make. You start seeing things more as a pure duality, and I'll get into that in just a minute, instead of a ego duality, which is more a black and white duality, good or bad duality. A pure duality says there is duality. There is a black and there is a white, but there's no judgment on a black or a white. It just is. And so there isn't this judgment of anything anymore. There's just the experience of all things, all different ways of being. And in that pure duality, we start seeing how everything just is perfectly in the way it is, and becomes a unifying principle for us and a unifying feeling in our heart that we keep expanding as we go into that realm, as opposed to the old self and in the duality. They call the unification field, if you will, just kind of throwing a label on it, which I don't really like doing, but let's just say, for the sake of speaking, the unification field is filled with higher frequencies, higher vibrations. That doesn't mean they're better than the lower vibrations, because now you're in more of a pure dualistic field. It just means they're higher vibratory, higher frequency. They seem to have a unique feeling for you compared to the low density, heavy feelings. We must feel both to expand our oneness and our unification and our feeling of our spiritual beingness, so that we can continue to grow and to expand, and find our hearts more in a higher frequency realm, which some call, higher dimensions. Could be fourth dimension, could be fifth dimension, and higher up from there. So there's a huge difference between the two. We can work on that while we're here. It's what Bill and I and others have called the work. The work is shifting the old self and allowing that to be uh, settled and moving in to more of a unified field into the new self, let's call it, with a higher S, which is a higher frequency, which is more part of your soul and your innate beingness, that has come down from higher realms. When your soul comes down, it comes down from higher realms. I believe our journey here as a soul is to find that. I believe that we came here with an unknowing as we were born, amnesia, as they call it, that we were already this higher self. And when we came here, the goal was for us to walk through life and to bring that higher energy of our soul, our higher self, and implant it here on the earth. That means to plant seeds of higher frequency where we go. I believe that we do that once we cross over with our heart to the higher frequency. We cross the veil and we allow our heart to become our director, as opposed to our ego self. You might call it the heart self, even if you want to. It's kind of a new way of looking at it, I guess. And that becomes our director. And that director, the heart self, is truly only there for experiential reasons, which means it never judges, it never causes harm. If there's any judgment, if there's any harm in any situation, it's all ego based. There's no heart there at all. That's the biggest differentiation I can make for you. And that's really hard for each one of us to recognize when we haven't let go of our old self quite yet. If the old self is still at play, sometimes it'll be very difficult for us to say to ourselves, which place am I in right now in this situation? Am I in my mind or am I my heart? Am I in my old self or am I recognizing things from my new self? Which one is it? There's an intuitive ability that our heart gives us to show us that takes some work to get there. There's a lot of releasing that has to take place from our old self and some of the traumas and energies that we've attached ourselves to in past lives, in lives that we live today, in the attachments that we have made in this life that don't serve us anymore. And then once we do, there's an opening, there's a breath of fresh air that comes in that says, you can still have abundance, just don't be attached to it. Don't make judgments with it. You can still enjoy it and pass it around and give it out and keep it in for your own use to be able to pass out again. That's okay. But if you're attached to it, that's where you're coming back into the old self, and the separated self is saying, well, I need mine and I will give it out the way I want to. So if you ever use the word I, be careful, because that's usually the ego. That's usually I, mine. It's not any opening to share and be a part of something. Mine, I is separation. This is my house. This is my money. This is my saving. This is my car. When we start living from a place that everything is borrowed here for us to experience, instead of looking at it as mine, now we're on the right track. Now we're allowing what infinite abundance has given us to enjoy in this life to be able to be shared with all things, not just keeping it for ourselves, which causes separation. So I'm going to take a break here. I've just gone on for quite a bit. And I'll hand it over to Bill again just to see if there's any questions or any thoughts that you might have, Bill, or comments you want to make up to this point.
Well, two or three things jump into my mind. In some of the work I've developed in my own career and in the work in education, particularly, it seems to me that comparison, that is, seeing that there is this thing here and this thing here, okay, is absolutely, I'm going to say, a natural and inevitable response to our existence on this plane, on this physical plane, because we see different objects, we see different things, etc., and we compare one for the other so that we know that something is larger or something is smaller, etc., etc. The issue I believe that you're talking about is when we attach
Mm-hmm.
judgment of various kinds to the comparison.
Mm-hmm.
So this comparison means that it's not only better, but it's by definition good and therefore superior and therefore something we want. And therefore the other side of it, the other thing we're comparing it with is of less value or worse or negative,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And then that's when we begin to develop the polarity of comparison, if it's fair
Mm-hmm.
to say that. Because there are things that are taller, there are things that are smaller, there are things that are darker, there are things that are lighter. Okay. We, to negotiate through life, we have to perceive and acknowledge those things at times. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or, in fact, very often. But it's a matter of casting judgment on them and separating from them that
Mm-hmm.
I think creates the issue. And
Yeah.
fortunately, our education system is replete with issues, processes, structures, etc., where the comparison is judgment. And
Mm-hmm.
consequently, it's almost inevitable for kids to come out of the system not feeling judged,
Mm-hmm.
either by their peers or by the system or by their teachers, etc. And the feeling judged is what then diminishes people and I think creates resentments and reactions where you somehow want to get even, and then that just creates a
Yeah.
downward spiral.
Yeah. In a pure dualistic state, kind of what I got into a little bit, everything is perfect just the way it is. There is no judgment. So one thing can be dark and one thing can be light, and they're perfect in their own way. There is no judgment as to what is wrong or right or in between or anything. We get the opportunity in a pure dualistic state to experience both, and that's it. There is no separation in experiencing both. We just experience both. But on the planet here, it's been placed into a separation state where some people will say, well, no, the dark is the greatest thing in the world. And some people say, no, the light is. And so all of a sudden we have a camp over here that's dark. We have a camp over here that's light, and never the twain shall meet. And all of a sudden we have a war because the light's got to prove that it's better than the dark, and the dark's got to prove it's better than the light. And they'll do that because they have stronger forces or whatever. So we create this kind of separation in every aspect of our life. It isn't just in education, like you're saying, which it is. It's in government, it's in relationship, it's in the things we buy, of course. It's everywhere. And this world has become deeper dualistic than ever before. It's not unified in any way, although we have individual souls on this planet that are holding the space to create the unification that's going on. I invite those out there to understand that I'm sure that most people see this. I would be really surprised if people didn't see that this is available to themselves, to see the separation the way it is, that it's become very obvious, even in our newscasting, how separate newscasting is. All you got to do is watch one channel and then flip the channel to another one, and they have the opposite understanding of the very same thing that we just saw on the other news channel, but they have a whole different spin as to how they're going to present it to you. And they're right, and the other people are wrong. And so it doesn't really matter where you go, because everywhere you go, you're going to be experiencing this dualistic understanding of this separate self. That's the conversation we're having here, is about the self and how we relate to what's going on and how we've developed our own separate self based upon what's going on outside of us, as opposed to understanding that within us we have the ability in our heart to let all that go and start on the journey to understand that the separate self is an illusion. There was before we came on, I was telling Bill that I just saw a a YouTube of Dolores Cannon. Some of you know who Dolores Cannon is, and basically the title was by Dolores Cannon was "Negative is an Illusion." I thought that was really funny to read just before I was going to come on and do a podcast about the separate self and the higher self, that there is no negativity. And some of you are probably saying right now, within the separate self's okay, because as long as you don't attach yourself to the separate self, then you're just experiencing both selves, and that's the way perfect dualism is. Unfortunately, in our world, it doesn't work that way, because the attachment to separate self is so strong that it's one of those things we have to honestly look at ourselves and see how much have we given our energy away to that attachment. The attachment is always the clue. I work with so many individuals with, let's call it addictive personalities. Every program, every life strategy that's been created by any specific psychologist or psychiatrist, because many of them have come up with all kinds of different ways of looking at personalities and such. The addictive personality isn't each one of them, it's everywhere. The attachment to something is what creates the separation. If one has an addictive personality in some capacity, the ego is going to find a way to find an emotional attachment to place on that addiction, so that person will keep doing it over and over again. That's called attachment, and it's in some cases is called an addiction. And so when you see, the easiest thing, of course, is to say, okay, alcoholics. Well, they say the alcohol is the problem. The alcohol is not the problem. The attachment, the addictive personality has created attachments. If they were to give up the alcohol and haven't worked on the addictive personality, they would find another attachment to replace the alcohol so they could still have the addictive personality. So the alcohol isn't the problem. It's the addictive personality that's the problem. And that's where the work lies. And it's the same in our separate self. We have become attached to things that we feel define us and make us better than the less than thing we thought. So we're always trying to improve the unworthiness that we believe that we are by attaching ourselves to things outside of us that we think are better than that unworthiness. Therefore, when we have that attachment, then we cover up the separate self and say, we're okay now. And we're still not. We're still going outside ourselves to attach ourselves and judge things so we can feel better than less than, if that makes sense. And so we,
Excuse me,
sure,
that is such a fundamental point. Would you please be willing to repeat it?
sure.
That very syndrome that is so common, please.
Yeah. The syndrome is again what's called an addictive personality. And some people say, well, that's just the alcoholics, or that's just the drug users, or whatever. And no, it's not. It's everyone. Everyone that is a separate self, which is all of you and me, have created an addictive personality where we attach ourselves to something to cover up what we don't want to see. So, sports. I might get involved in sports to make myself feel better than what I really feel. Because at home, I'm always downtrodden. I'm always said, you're not good enough. So if I can go prove myself by attaching myself to playing a sport and doing the best I can to get better and better and better, and even if I become the state champion, my father might say, well, you could have done better in that last event that you did. Instead of just saying, wow, you finally did it. You're such a great person. I'm still going to find something else that I can attach myself to through my addictive personality to still cover up more of what I feel less than. Each one of us has that. And you can look at your life circle and you can look at the addictive possibilities that you've created for yourself. And you don't see sports as an addiction per se. We always are told that it's the drugs, it's the sexuality, the pornography, it's the alcohol. It's becoming immersed in something so much that you can't see outside yourself. Addictions are everywhere. They're in everything. And the ego is looking for ways to get you attached to something so you don't see the truth. So you don't see your heart. That you keep trying over and over and over again to separate yourself from others that you see are less than you so you can feel better than them. And that's the separation principle. And within
And can we,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Can we stop right there and say that the source of that syndrome that you're talking about, okay, is the feeling of inadequacy that we
Yeah,
have?
the unworthiness.
And because we're unworthy, or
Right,
because we feel inadequate or have been told we're inadequate, we're trying to compensate in
right.
some way by proving ourselves, okay,
In the outside world.
to be the opposite of that.
In the outside world.
Okay.
We go outside
Yes.
of
Yeah.
ourselves to prove it instead of going in and trying to release the addictive personality. If we would go inside and release the addictive personality, we wouldn't be searching outside of ourselves to prove ourselves anymore. We would already know that we're pure essence, we're divine essence, that we have a capacity within our hearts to create and manifest anything that we want. That's the journey of a master, is to change that over to being that master, that spiritual master, to be able to manifest things in our lives that will take us to a higher place of no separation and to serve in ways that will assist others to find themselves as well as best we can. That's the opposite. And so,
I would like to take this, if I may, excuse me, if I can take it to the really big picture, okay? Inadequacy, feelings of inadequacy come when there is an agent or agency that has judged us. Okay. If we go truly to our inner selves, okay, to the being that is here, God is not judging us. God is not condemning us. And we're being told by institutions and religions and all these people that that judgment is inevitable. And I believe that when you say go inside, it's go inside to realize that this higher truth is there. We're not being judged. There is, if to use different words from Dolores Cannon, there is no judgment in this higher domain of who we are, in the self with the capital S, is not being judged. It's only the self with the little s that imagines that it's being judged. Is it fair to put it in those terms?
Sure. And Yeshua, when he was here, would say that you're not a sinner, that you were not born with sin, that that is totally against the understanding of divine essence within each one of us. We come down in a pureness in our soul, and we are born into this world. And when we're born into this world, the programming begins. And as the programming begins, we understand that everything is separate, and we have to work our way back to the divine essence of who we are, and that's going home. We've actually had a podcast on that principle. And as we stay in this world, and we continue to work in this world from our minds, be in this world from our minds, without working with our hearts, then we continue on that path of separation, like we said, and then eventually it doesn't serve us any longer for whatever reason that is, and we continue to find a new way to be in this world. And it's the inner journey, and as they've said, the inner journey is much longer than the outer journey. It takes forever to come down from the head into the heart. And that divine essence that Bill's talking about, that sense of higher spirit or higher self, has been waiting for you. It's not something you go get. It's not on a shelf at Walmart. You can't buy it. You must experience it. To be able to experience it, we must let go of the old self. We must let go of everything we've put around it that is stopping us from having that realization. And that's the work. There's a lot of work in releasing these energies that we've created for ourselves. You can see it in humanity. It's easy to look outside yourself and see it all around you. But then it's a whole different journey to look at yourself in the mirror and say, how have I been a part of that? How have I bought into that? How have I given my energy away to it and not knowingly do it? And become more conscious of the choices I'm making, become more aware of those conscious choices, become more aware of the experiences that are left to be had yet, of exploring that inner self of myself, to understand that the letting go process is to make new choices, to experience those new choices, and then to feel those new choices. And in that choice is the letting go process already of what the old self used to be. And I start kind of, how would I say, rebirthing myself into, as Yeshua or any of the masters in the mystery schools say, when you rebirth yourself, you're not rebirthing through a womb. You're rebirthing from your physical body into your new illumined energetic body, which then is a rebirth from the old self. And it's never the same, completely different. That's why they use the butterfly as such a resource to look at um, the worm going into hiding for a while, and when it comes out, it's got these beautiful wings. It's never the same as what it looked like before, and that's kind of our way of looking at transformation of ourselves and rebirthing of ourselves. Is once we let go of the old self and everything that it was defined by for us, and we open ourselves up to this newness, we start bringing in a different way of walking our walk as opposed to being controlled and trying to be controlling of what's going on. Totally different way of being in this world. A lot of it has to do with the work, recognizing your programs, your life strategies, not judging where you came from, not judging what you've done. That's just adding more to the ego self, is to just be factual and realistic about what was going on during those growth periods in your life, during the things that you then expounded on after that, the choices you've made up to this point. You probably have harmed people and you didn't even know it. You've probably harmed yourself and you didn't even know it. So there's no sense at this point to judge yourself in these things because you didn't know what you were doing. Your ego was in charge. It's not to, let's say, let you off the hook and you can keep going. You now know you didn't know what you're doing, and now you know you do. So you can't use that as a backup and say, well, my ego, my program tells me what to do. Sorry, that's not the way this works. That's not being honorable. That's not being authentic. That's trying to get around and skirt around what had happened. You must go deep into yourself and relive some of the harms that you created so you know what you're forgiving. And that's hard to do, but that's the work that has to be done. And once you clear yourself of your system of all these things that were created, manifested in your old self, there's an opening, like I said. And as that opening comes, you make new choices through your awareness that aren't anything close to what was before. And in that, the separated self begins to die away on its own. You don't kill it, you're not trying to, but it just kind of falls away on its own. It's still going to be there until you pass away because you created it. And the new self is now being rebirthed. And the new self will look completely different than the old self. If somebody were to be with you when you were 25 or 30, your old self, and not see you again until you were 55 or 60, and you've done the work and you've moved on and you've let go of the old self, they might run into you and they won't have any idea who you are. As you talk to them and say, hey, I remember playing football with you. Who are you? I played right next to you. And they would feel you and look at you and say, I can't believe it's you. What did you do? How did you change? What happened? Somebody told me that once when I went back for a union years ago. And then I had lost, like, I used to be 225 pounds and I played middle linebacker. And by the time I saw them again, this was maybe, I'd say probably about 10 years later, I was down to 180 pounds. I'm much lighter than that now, but I had lost all that weight. And when I got to the reunion, the coach did not know who I was. Literally did not know who I was. And he made a comment to me. He says, how come you didn't get in that kind of shape when you were playing for me? And I said, because I needed to be this big guy to be able to play in the middle. So it's kind of like that. Like you do the work. If you're doing the work and shift your old self to your new self, as you're doing that and you're still with your family, they'll see the transformation that's taking place. But if you're with somebody here and 15 years later, you're over here, they won't recognize you. Some people do in your own community recognize that you're different just because you're projecting a different kind of energy. Where before you were much more argumentative or you're much more closed down. And now because you've done the work and let go of that old self who did that purposely to hold on to the program, and you're much more open and cheery and want to help people and want to let people know who you are, they're like, what happened? You're not the same person you were. It's just so refreshing to be with you. It can happen that way too. And so there is a transformation that takes place. There is a shift that takes place for each one of us if we allow it to happen. The new self, the capital S self, is a much more higher frequency. And I mean, it's dramatically different. It's not just a little bit, it's dramatically different. I would suggest also that it will open the door to other energies coming in from the universe to assist you to keep going further. Once the universe knows, and they know, that you've made that transition from the old self to the new self, which means you can never go back. You can't do it. You cannot go back to the old self. It's going to try and drag you back, but it's not going to be able to. Once the universe knows that, they're going to start sending you synchronicities, opportunities to be aware of, choices to make that is going to enhance that energy to come through, to enhance that energy to be shared with others. It's kind of like called planting seeds of energy wherever you go. The energies of the universe will be coming in. You'll become more tuned into those energies. You'll become more tuned into even other beings and other opportunities to converse with other dimensions, other beings and energies that are out there to serve you even more. The door opens to things that you never thought possible. Actually, I was talking to that with my daughter today on how open opportunities have become, and how the universe compliments you for the things that you're doing to serve people, not to get anything back. Separate itself. If you do something for something, you're expecting something back. There is a need to get something back, whatever that need might be, whether it be a pat on the back, or whether it's to look better than somebody else, or whether, if I do this for you, then you should do this for me, kind of thing. When you're serving authentically from the higher self, you don't care. You just don't care anymore. You're just so happy to be able to share something with somebody. That's the beauty of it. You're not looking for anything back. But you know what? The universe compliments you in ways that you can't even see coming. That infinite abundance that we've talked about, it's out there and it happens. And you get things that happen to you on a daily basis that you're just smiling and going, wow, what a life I'm living, because of the way I'm allowing myself to become in this new rebirth, in this new self. And so there's a true energetic feeling that begins to surround you and assist you to continue to go farther and farther. I will say too, you still are going to have challenges. They're still coming. And those challenges now become opportunities. They don't become issues. They don't become even challenges. They become opportunities. And you see them that way. You see them as a challenge before, and now you see them as an opportunity for growth. You don't get all down on your luck because something happened to you. Before you even get there, you start looking at it like, I wonder how this opportunity is going to enhance me. I can't wait to see the choices I'm going to have and the things that will happen for me to get there. It's a totally different way of being in life. You're not separated anymore. You're a part of, which means it's more unified. And you're looking to not only help yourself in those situations, but usually in those challenges, you're actually serving somebody else at the same time as well. So there's the difference between the low self, the high self, the low S self, the high capitalized S self. Anything else, Bill, that you want to share?
I would just like to affirm what you've just spoken about in terms of how different you can be once you've done more work. Because I've had incidents in my life where after going through a particular workshop or whatever, where there really was a lot of major growth happening, people observed an immediate difference in me. But today, you spoke of what your daughter had to say. I went to the post office for the first time in ages. My little rural post office.
That had to be a good challenge, right
there. Oh
there.
boy, I'll tell you, And I found my way all the way there. And when I got into the very small area where this is, there was a man at the counter. And he was taking forever. And he was taking forever. And then I realized he could hardly speak. He had lost his voice.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh my goodness, his overall functioning is slow. And then I realized how old this man was and I'm up standing behind him, so I never saw his face.
Couldn't see
Okay.
him. Yeah. Yeah.
And the lady at the counter was very patient with him. And as I observed him, it was an experience of inner growth
Sure.
that, who knows how long it will be before I'm that guy at the counter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was thinking, God, if this had been an earlier time in my life, I'd be shuffling my feet and I'd be doing all this stuff. Why doesn't this guy get out of the way? And why doesn't
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
hurry up? And all
Yeah.
of this. And when he apparently spoke to her that he would like stamps. Okay. And she said, we have all kinds of stamps. Because I had been looking at this billboard of stamps they have, and they've got 24 kinds of stamps up there now, which they normally don't have. And he had to go up and point to the ones that he wanted because he
Mhm.
couldn't say the words.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was like, God, what a change in me
Hmm.
to see this experience as just a wonderful gift to just observe and feel empathy for this man. And I helped him. I opened the door. I mean, this is a cubbyhole almost, but I opened the door for him so he could go out. And he
Hmm.
thanked me. And God, an absolutely different experience than, God, I'm here and I want to get this over with as fast as I
Yeah. Right.
can,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah,
Um, and
quite a
that,
shift.
and that's a personal experience that you had. It was very intimate. And the challenge was there, and the judgment came first. And then after the judgment was the opportunity to look at it from a different perspective as you saw it develop. Um, and it causes us to take a step back and take a breath and say, wow, um, I certainly read this the wrong way. And do I read other things the wrong way? Do I always jump to a judgment, which most of us do? Our first initial reaction in most cases in our journey is to jump to judgment really quickly. And it's a great understanding that you bring up because can we notice that as soon as we can, so we can shift the energy from that judgment into something else, like you say, to empathy or to compassion, understanding, um, and see that we can do this all the time instead of just in that one situation. Um, every challenge I'm going to suggest to everybody here, as you do the work, the challenges don't stop. They continue to help you to grow, even in the minute situations, which I'm going to say to most people that would be a kind of a minute situation that you went through, but it wasn't. It was a huge situation because it helped you grow. And if your spirit or your soul is growing because something that happened in the moment for you, then it's not a minute situation anymore. It is actually a great growing opportunity. You could have stayed in the judgment and walked away and didn't realize what happened at all, and you would have lost the opportunity that the universe was providing you to find more higher frequency energy to bring into yourself to serve. And I would say in most cases, that's pretty much what happens in today's world. That people don't take the opportunity to see what's right in front of them. And they're looking for the aha moment, or they're looking for, God needs to talk down to me to tell me what to do so I know it's really God. It's like they're looking for the Moses receiving the Ten Commandments type of a thing, with the burning bush and all this stuff. And it's not going to happen. You're going to grow through the little things that happen, the minute synchronicities that show up in your life that provide you an opportunity to bring a smile to your face. Here's my story, and we can maybe end with this. I order supplements from this company. As you know, Bill, I eat a lot of supplements. And because I take a lot of supplements, I have to order them kind of on a quarterly basis, maybe, or so on. Well, they were behind, and so I had a couple of bottles of supplements that were being shipped to me, and they tried 3 times. And up in the mountains here, how hard it is to get a package. And so usually this company sends it FedEx, and FedEx will deliver to your house. And they usually do. I get my supplements through FedEx. But the first time they tried to send these two supplement bottles, it was sent by UPS. UPS does not deliver to our post office anymore. They returned the pills. That took about 2 weeks. Then the next time after they returned the pills, they contacted me and said, "Oh, we're sorry, we got your pills back. We're sending them out again, and you'll get them." And I said, "Okay, you must send them FedEx to be delivered to my house." They didn't send it FedEx. They sent it through DHL. DHL delivers to the post office, not to my house. So DHL didn't have my PO box. They got sent back again. That's 2 more weeks. The lady calls me again, and I know you're laughing, and eventually you do have to laugh at this. It's like, you got to be kidding me, right? Nope, not kidding. And so they sent it back. She contacts me again. She says, "You know what? We got this again. I'm going to make sure you get your pills. I'm going to send them out." And I said again, in the line, in the email, "You must send them FedEx because they won't get to me if you don't." She sends the pills out. She gives me the tracking number and everything. She sends it by USPS to my address. It will not get to my address because the post office doesn't deliver
Correct.
to my house. And so she sends me back an email. She says, I can't tell you how we're going to send it because they don't let me know. And I'm like, oh my God, what kind of world? All the technology we have in this world, and I can't get 2 bottles of supplements. It's crazy. And I'm laughing my head off. So I send her back a text and I said, "Okay, it's going to come back to you again. Since the last 3 times you sent it 3 times to the US Post Office, please put on my PO box." And she says, "What's the PO box?" I said, 271. She sends me back an email. She says, "I intercepted your delivery, and they put on there also, besides your address, the PO box." Hallelujah. 2 weeks later, I still have not gotten my pills. I go to the post office. They say, "We have never gotten your package." I'm like, I'm kind of done. I don't know. At this point, I'm like, I throw my hands up to the universe and I say, "Guys, I'm surrendering finally to you. I should have surrendered the first time, but here I am, a month and a half, 2 months later, and I'm on my knees and I'm surrendering to you. Whoever has my pills, I hope they're the ones that they can use." That's all I'm going to say. The next day, literally the next day, this was yesterday, I'm on my run, my daily run, and I see a messenger on Facebook. This is like an email that's sent on Facebook, you guys. And I see in the messenger, there's a picture, and it's from this woman, Erica. And I don't know any Erica. And I almost didn't want to open it up, but I open it up, and it's a picture of a package. And she says, "Is this you?" And it's got my name on it. And I'm like, oh my God, this woman's got my pills. I can't believe this. And I'm looking up to heaven. I'm going, oh my God, how did you guys do this? This is insane. How did, and I said, "Yes, that's my package. Can I come over and pick it up? Or if you feel uncomfortable, you can come to my house or whatever." She lives in Dillon Valley, which was right where you used to live over there. It's like 5 minutes away. And she says, "I'll be here through the afternoon." I said, "I'll come by at 1 o'clock and get it." She says, "Great." And I go over and pick it up, and she comes walking out with it. She's smiling. And I look at her and say, "I don't know how the hell you got this package, but thank you so much for being so conscientious and trying." She says, "I'm part of One Man's Junk here, which is part of Marketplace. And my name was in One Man's Junk because I sell some stuff." And she says, "I got your name from there. I located you. I knew you were here. And that's how I got a hold of you." And she says, "Here's your package." And I said, "I don't even know how you got it." And she says, I got it because the P.O. box on there's my P.O. box. It was 217 instead of 271. And so, and that's my story. And the universe had something to do with this somehow. She knew enough not to turn it back into the post office and say, this isn't who I am. And it would have got sent back again. And I would have never seen it. But she had enough compassion and consciousness to look me up, actually, which is pretty profound in today's world. And so it's might be something kind of crazy and just kind of a synchronicity that really isn't that important. But let me tell you something, to see it all transpire the way it did, and to have somebody at the other end finally be compassionate enough to go out of their way to serve me is what comes back to me, because I get to serve others. If you are authentic and you work as best as you can to open up your heart, these little things which seem so little will happen to you, and happen to you in profound ways. And that's what being the high self is. That's what being the high S self is to be your authentic heart. That's what this is all about. And with that, I say goodbye. That was a long story.
Well, I was going to conclude this by thanking the audience for sticking in with the Spirit Partners Comedy Hour.
Yeah.
But it's the Spirit Partners Gratitude Hour. So, Tomei, I thank you for what you shared. And yes, I got a wonderful, wonderful belly laugh that extended for minute after minute after minute. But um, the message is well received. It's our authenticity that radiates the great
Yes.
stuff out there.
Yeah. And I have been blessed in so many ways because of that.
Yep.
And Bill knows there's times when I have not had the abundance to carry on, and they find a way to assist me in ways that I just am dumbfounded by. So authenticity is not just a word, it's a
Yeah.
feeling, and it's a feeling from the heart.
Well, thank you. And audience, um, I won't say tune in next time. I don't know. There will be a next time, but I am in no position at this moment to say what the topic might be. Okay, but it might be authenticity. You never know.
You never
Okay.
know.
All right. Thank you so much, and see you again
Thanks,
soon.
guys. See you.
Okay.
See you soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.